Baie welkom by melkinjoutee tyd. We were completely sleep deprived, exhausted at that stage as Stephen was a terrible sleeper. The first time he ever slept for about 6 hours straight was at around 18 months. So we were certainly not remotely considering any more children at that time. Anyway, this friend of mine, Sue, who had a solid prophetic history and reputation, came to me that night and said the following. I know how you feel about having more kids, and I definitely am weary of prophesying about relationships and children. But I feel the Lord is saying that there is another boy in you. I laughed out loud at her and kind of wrote it off, that word, and put it back. And I put it in the back burner. Nou ja, ek is dolgelukkig oor die feit dat ek 3 kinders het. En ek dink ek kan myself nogals indink as iemand vir my nou moet kom vertel, ek gaan nog 'n kindjie kry, nee. Dan hardloop ek die vlaktes in. Maar as jy 'n profesie gekry het daaroor, dan is dit 'n ander saak. Maar hierdie verhaal het 'n ander kinkel in die kabel.
Ja, dit is my so 'n voorreg om vandag ons gas aan julle bekend te stel, Lisa Watt. Wat ek nie geweet het nie, sy is 'n mamma wat saam met ons kinders op skool was vandag, so dis my so lekker om haar weer te sien na al die jare. Maar ek het nooit besef haar verhaal van as ma het my gisterand toe ek nou haar getuienis gelees het dit my so diep geraak en ek weet dit gaan julle harte ook baie diep raak. Lisa, baie welkom by ons vandag. Dit is vir ons so voorreg om jou hier by ons te hê en ons ken mekaar al eintlik baie lank. En mense weet so min van mekaar af, maar weet jy wat, jou verhaal was vir my so ongelooflik, dit raak 'n mens so diep as ma, en dan besef 'n mens eintlik hoeveel mense het, wat jy as vanselfsprekend aanvaar, en hoeveel mense het om voor dankbaar te wees. So, ja, baie welkom by ons, by melkinjoutee tyd.
Baie dankie dat julle my genooi het, en dat julle my na al hierdie jare onthou. Hierdie storie, it's a story that needs to be told, and it was good to revisit it and rethink it and write it down. It's a number of years ago, but it's a good reminder.
Yes.
It was interesting. I remember when our sons, all 3 of our sons, played billikie rugby.
Yeah.
Then we had to stand there in the cold, and you brought these twinnies, and I remembered something about the twinnies, but I didn't know everything exactly.
Yeah.
Because you were a little bit apprehended or
apprehensive.
Ja. Wat praat ek Engels nou?
Ja, praat maar gerus. Ek gaan wel Engels praat. Anders klink ek baie sleg.
Jy was versigtig om altyd te vertel van die tweeling, en ek dink dis omdat dit 'n proses was van waardeur jy gegaan het, want dit was rof toe ek dit nou eintlik presies nou lees, maar soos ek gesê het, jy het 'n profetiese woord ontvang, en toe kry jy sommer nog enetjie.
Ja.
En Stephen was jou tweede kind.
Ja.
So jy het Nathan en Stephen, want Nathan het saam met ons kiddies gejol. Dan sit Stephen en toe kom die tweeling.
Dis reg, ja.
Maar vertel vir ons hoe dit alles begin het.
Okay, so ons het ons 2 seuns gehad, en ons het op 'n stadium gevoel na ons eventually begin slaap het met hierdie Stephen van ons wat net nooit ooit geslaap het nie. We felt that it was time for us to have a third child. Our family wasn't complete. But anyway, let me backtrack to that prophetic word. It was a dear friend of mine who actually came to me one night. We were at a joint church service in the city, and she came and said to me, I really feel that God is saying there's another boy in you. And as you read, I laughed out loud, and I was like, no. And I completely put it aside. A couple of months later, I was at a tea garden with my boys, and they were playing, and in the background, a mom called her son and said, Ryan, come, we're going home. And it was completely random, but in that moment, I felt God saying to me, your next son will be called Ryan.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, well, that's a little bit unexpected. But anyway, you take it and you kind of put it back. And then it was months later that we decided to fall pregnant. Fell pregnant very quickly. Never struggled with that. But I was very, very ill from the get-go. I was admitted, I was 5 weeks pregnant, so it wasn't really even showing up on tests that I was pregnant, but I was admitted, and at that stage, the doctor said to me, there's either something very wrong with this pregnancy, or it's a multiples pregnancy, but we'll check on that tomorrow. So the next day, I was wheeled into her consulting room. Douglas was at work. He was having to work in the hospital at that stage, so I was alone. And this doddery old lady, she wasn't very, very friendly. But anyway, she did the scan. She's like, oh yeah, there's a problem with that ovary, and there's a problem with that ovary.
I know.
But there are two. There are two babies. Go and see a specialist. Two babies. And that's how I found out I was pregnant with twins.
It's a matter of fact.
Yeah, net so. Go and see the specialists. But yeah, that was the welcome to the world of multiples for me. Yeah, and that was the beginning of a journey. I knew in my heart that I would have another boy, that one of them would be a boy. Held out all hope that one would be a little girl. I always wanted a little girl, but that never happened.
So jy was bly geweest toe jy uitvind dis 'n tweeling, of was dit aanvanklik 'n skok?
Nee, ek het gechunk. Ek stoksel alleen in die hospitaal. Ek is siek soos 'n hond. My man is nie daar nie. Dit was vir my 'n groot skok.
Ja.
Ons het nogal ons geloof uitgesit vir 'n derde kind, want die lewe is maar duur. Ja. En nou gaan ons van 2 na 4, so dit was nogal 'n geweldige skok vir ons.
Ja, en soos jy gesê het, jy kom toe nou net uit daai fase uit waar jy 'n seentjie gehad het wat tot op 18 maande nie geslaap het nie. En toe het jy nou net weer amper bietjie herstel, en nou hoor jy gaan 2.
Now you're going into 2.
Maar daai siekte wat jy gehad het, klink verskriklik. Ek moes dit gaan Google.
Yeah, it's a big word. It just basically means that you're as sick as a dog and you
en jy kan niks inneem nie.
Jy braak vir 9 maande solidly.
Maar wat vir my dalk 'n positiewe ding is dat jy is veronderstel om vet te word wanneer jy swanger is.
I was supermodel thin. I was supermodel thin. I looked really, really good at the end of my pregnancy.
But because of this illness, you couldn't. And it was actually very interesting when I read it, or daaroor gelees. Dit is eintlik 'n tipe van 'n diabetes wat gebeur.
Dit kan daarop eindig, ja.
Want jou liggaam, dit is maar eintlik so interessant hoe jou mense liggaam soos half weird raak.
So you get morning sickness, which is regular morning sickness. Most of us get it. You either are ill or you're just nauseous. But this is just an ongoing, permanent nausea and vomiting.
But you did not have that with the other two.
No, I did, but not quite as severe. I was sick with the others, but not like this. I was hospitalized a couple of times for it, and I was on drips permanently. And eventually my husband was injecting me with anti-nausea stuff. Just because we didn't want to go to the hospital or to the doctor's rooms anymore. So it was pretty hectic, but they were fine.
Oh, that's amazing.
The twins were fine. I was not, but the twins were really fine. They did well in the pregnancy.
And they did full term?
Yes, they did.
Twins full term.
Yes, they did full term, and they were born by a cesarean section in Unitas Hospital, and it all went according to plan as far as that's concerned.
It was in April, 2010. April 2010.
Yes, yeah.
So then they were born, and there were your 2 twinnies.
Yes.
But you gave them Ryan was obviously the one.
Yes, the firstborn would be Ryan. So it was later on in my pregnancy that I discovered that it was identical twins.
Oh yes, okay.
And that was kind of deurslaggewend, because then I kind of knew, okay, it's definitely a boy, and it seems to be 2 boys. So the little girl dream went right off the page. And then obviously at about 12 or 13 weeks, we found out it was identical twin boys. Sure. So then Sue was wrong, because she prophesied there's another boy in me, where in fact there were another 2 boys in me. But so she and I still joke about that and laugh about that today. So they were born full term, and Ryan, his name means little king. And during the pregnancy, we kind of felt to name the other brother Owen. And later we went back and found out what the meaning of that was, and it means of noble birth. So to me, it's quite amazing that their names have the same meaning. We didn't know that when we chose their names.
Sure.
But that at the end of the day, their names actually mean the same thing. Is quite special.
Is an identical twin in one embryo?
That's what I was thinking. Dis presies wat ek gedink het toe jy dit nou toe ek die getuienis gelees het, dink ek maar so was nie verkeerd nie, want
they were one creature at one point.
Ja, dis wat ek dink. It's een eiersjalletjie wat gesplit het. So actually it was one egg cell. So she was halfway right.
She was halfway right. Okay, touche, well done.
She just saw till there. I
say it's the moment that God sneezed. That those cells split, and that's why we have 4, not 2.
Maar hierdie woord van Ryan, dat jy nog 'n seun gaan kry, baie vinnig skielik suid geloop, soos they went south, like the Englishmen would say, you will say. But what happened in there?
Yeah, so they were born full term, as you said, and they were very healthy at birth. Ryan's APGAR was 9 out of 10. That's the score that they give them at birth.
It was
good. Perfectly normal. And Owen was also 9 out of 10. Ryan was the bigger of the brothers. He weighed 2.4, and Owen was small. He was 1.9 at birth.
Sure. But 2.4, I mean, I suppose for twins that's kind of normal.
Yes.
But I mean, it's a small baby.
Yeah. So Ryan, so he was perfectly healthy. He was full color. He was everything, and he was the bigger of the two.
Yeah.
A good size for a twin. Owen was, like I said, very dinky. He was tiny, but what's the miracle of his birth is that he never needed any assistance. He never went into the neonatal unit. Yeah, they usually don't discharge babies under 2 kilograms. But he was so strong and such a little fighter that he didn't actually even go into the NICU at all. The day he was discharged on day 3, he weighed 1.7. He was this tiny little thing. He was so dinky. His long legs and just Fallenbeen. He was the sweetest little thing. But
hy was 'n fighter.
He was absolutely a fighter.
Ja, sy grootte het nie het nie bepaal
wat in sy hartjie aangaan.
Wat in sy hartjie aangaan.
Verseker nie. Hy's nog steeds feisty. But I think it's going to stand him in good stead in life.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, so at birth they were fine, and then about 10 minutes after birth, Ryan's saturation started dropping. So they started giving him oxygen in the recovery room, and then from there they went into the NICU and they put him on oxygen. And it just started deteriorating from there. He just got worse and worse and worse at that point.
And you mentioned he had 17 drips in his little body.
Ag heerlik, hy daai klein ou lyfie het was swaar gekry. I just remember the lists and lists and lists and lists of pipes that came out of him, and all those things on that machine going into his body. But yeah, so he initially, they were born on a Monday. On the Monday evening, she said to us, the doctor, he's a little bit sick. We're a little bit worried, but he's not in dark waters yet, so we're still okay. By the Tuesday morning, she was saying to us that he's actually quite sick, and we're starting to get worried. By the Tuesday night, we are very, very, very worried. He's unbelievably sick. By the Wednesday, he was critical, and the Wednesday afternoon, they actually said to us, he's not going to make it. I was busy preparing Owen to go home. He was being discharged, and I will never forget the neonatal manager, Anna Marie, coming into the ward and looking for me, and she's saying, "That's the face of the mother I need to see. Your little guy is not going to make it. You need to go and see him."
Hoe voel mense op daai oomblik?
Nee, dit is ja, dit's baie moeilik om te onthou. So mense bring ek dink die Here is genadig so, hy laat ons vergeet. We sometimes forget the things that we go through. I think that's why we all have more children, because we kind of forget. But that's for free. It was a terrible time. I think it was really traumatic, especially because this was the promised child. This was the little boy that God had promised me. It was the one that he'd prophesied about me. It's the one that he'd named. I mean, this is like 2 years before they were even conceived.
Was he born first?
Yes.
Okay.
So he was the first one to come out, yeah.
It's almost a torture. Die Here beloof jou ietsie en dan vat hy dit weg.
Absoluut. It felt like a sick joke.
Indian giver, sorry. Met ons die Indian giver is, ons gee goed dan vat hy dit terug.
Dis reg.
En daai, ek dink jy moes ongelooflik kwaad gewees het vir die Here.
Ek was baie kwaad vir hom. Ek was nogal baie kwaad vir hom. Ja, ons het ongelooflike mediese span om ons gehad. Die pediater Dr. Marleen Engelbrecht was phenomenaal. She's an amazing doctor. She was so on it. She was on it. She would be in her consulting rooms with patients and she'd phone every now and then, Court, what does this look like? What does this look like? Adjust this, make this change, do this, do that. I'm sure she even slept in the neonatal unit at some point. The nursing staff were incredible. They fought with us, fought alongside us. We became firm friends with so many of them, and it's actually so ironic. I finished writing the story last week and I emailed it to you, and the next morning I had coffee with a friend and I bumped into the entire neonatal unit. We were having a birthday celebration in the coffee shop, and I'm like, you won't even believe me, you won't believe what I've just written. And all of those ladies onthou jy daai? Ja, ons onthou daai ene was siek. Daai enetjie het dit amper nie gemaak nie.
Maar daar het 'n tyd toe gekom wat hulle nou sê, jy moet gaan groet.
Yeah. So, excuse me. That was on the Wednesday afternoon. We went in and we were obviously devastated. We were completely bowled over by worry and like you said, a little bit of anger and a little bit of fisticuffs with the Lord. And we had exhausted all medical options. They had, if there was a maximum dosage of medication that they could get, they'd exceeded the maximum dose. They'd given more than...
That they brought nitrous oxide?
Yes, nitrous oxide gas. They couriered it from Joburg. We watched the progress on the highway. They are there. There's a hold up. There's a traffic jam.
That was the last resort.
That was one of the last. It is a treatment for his condition.
Yes.
It's a well-known treatment for his condition, but it was being brought in at that stage.
What was wrong with him? Did they figure out what was wrong with him?
Yeah, they did. We don't know what the cause was, but he had what you call persistent fetal circulation syndrome. Basically, when a baby is born, the blood pressure in their lungs switches. In utero, they don't breathe, so their lungs don't work. When they're born, the pressure in the lungs drops, and the blood will then flow from a high pressure into a low pressure, and so that's when it starts circulating through the lungs. So that never happened. So his blood was circulating through his body. He was breathing. His lungs were working, which is why he had such a good APGAR at birth. But the blood was not going through the lungs.
So sy liggaam het nie suurstof gekry nie.
So hy het nie suurstof gekry nie. So ja, toe het hy gedesatureer en net erger en erger geword. Aanvanklik was hy net op suurstof gewees en toe later is hy ten volle geventileer en hulle het allerhande, elke masjien en alles op hom gehad. Hulle het sy bloeddruk so fyn dopgehou en so fyn gemonitor. Hy was so onstabiel, ons mag nie eens aan hom geraak het nie. Ek dink hy was 6 of 7 dae oud wat die eerste keer wat ek aan sy koppie mag gevryf het. The nursing of him was also very limited because they did not want to disturb the blood pressure because it was so unstable. So I've lose track a little bit. So that's what was wrong with him. What the risk factors of that is either it gets better or the children die when it's really bad. And because they couldn't figure out what the cause was, and none of the treatment options that they were offering were working. He was just getting progressively worse. Literally hour by hour he was getting worse. That we had a high risk of, should he make it, complications. There was a high risk of brain damage.
I can imagine, because no oxygen is getting to the brain.
Exactly. So cognitive or physical disability, blindness, having a stroke because his blood pressure was so high. They had to push his body's blood pressure up so high to try and get it higher than the lungs. So his blood pressure was really, really pushed to its limits.
But on that note, I'm going to interrupt you for a little bit and say goodbye to the viewers. En ons sal vir jou volgende week vertel.
Oh dear. Dun dun dun.
Tot ziens.
The long-awaited Embraced by Grace Guide, Volume 1 is finally available. This foundational volume is packed with biblical truth in a way that is easy to read and understand. The beautiful illustrations throughout the book makes it fun and easy to read, even for those who are not avid readers. This first book of 3 volumes contains chapters that every believer needs to grasp, like the supernatural realm, salvation, baptism, body, soul and spirit, Father, heart of God, prayer, praise and worship, and into the Word. This book is a valuable evangelical tool and makes for a great gift. The first volume is available for the low price of 200 Rand, postage excluded. Please use the details on screen to place your order.